it, no matter what the provocation, then we don't really have the free will to make that choice. That's kind of the point I'm making. Another thing it brings up here, I think, which makes it a bit more interesting, we could say a majority of humans, a majority of people could never commit some of the awful things we sometimes hear about in the news, whether
Yeah.
it's a murder or harming a child.
Yeah.
We people would just we could never do those things,
No.
and yet the counterbalance to that is, but quite clearly, there are individuals who would and do those awful things. So, does that mean, and this is a rhetorical question really, does
Yeah.
that mean that because they do those things, that in a sense they have no choice either? The fact that that they could do something so terrible. And we can all think of awful things that happen. Now, the danger here, of course, if we accept it on the one side that we don't really, if they do it, if we accept what I'm saying, we don't really have free will
Hmm.
because there's so many things we would never do in any circumstances,
Hmm.
then you could argue that on the other side, somebody could say, well, I do this because I'm kind of a bit programmed to do that in some way. And of course, the thing here is it could take away accountability and responsibility for people's bad actions as well. So again, there's a lot more to the concept of free will than we might think. When you're walking down the streets,
Yeah.
do you actually think? Do you think about the decision you've made to be walking to where you're going, which leg to when you start off, which leg you put forward first. You're walking somewhere, say for a half a mile.
Yeah.
Are you actually thinking about the decision you've made to do that? I suppose it depends where you're going,
Yeah.
but or are we just really on autopilot?
That's very good. I think when I was in primary school, there was something that was taught, and it was called voluntary and involuntary action.
Yeah,
And, and one of them was, and I remember that because it was the way that the teacher demonstrated. So, and the way that he taught it, he said, if you say, for instance, you was about to sit somewhere on a piece of furniture, for instance, and there was a sharp instrument there that you didn't see beforehand, that the moment your bum touches it, automatically you spring back up.
yeah,
And he
yeah.
said you don't have to think about it. You don't have to say, "Oh,
No,
there's a piece of uncomfortable
yeah,
object. I better get back up." He said that is an involuntary action. So on the basis of that, I would say generally, I think sometimes we are on autopilot. Because like you said, you don't think what foot you're gonna put forward first. You get out of
mm,
bed, you put your leg on the floor, and then you stand up. You don't think, right, hang on a minute, the right foot's supposed to go first.
absolutely. And of course, this is the point. The
Yeah,
brain, coming to the brain now, this incredible thing. They say it's the most incredible thing in the universe.
right.
Um, which of course it is because it's so mysterious, so incredible. But that's operating on it's our autopilot really for 24/7, 24 hours a day, every day, even when we are asleep or we're having our nap or anything else we're doing. The brain is constantly monitoring our systems, our body systems, which is quite
Absolutely.
remarkable, really. So that I think scientists, neurologists tend to think that the vast majority of decisions that we make are made by the brain, and we never know about it. I mean, consciousness is a relatively small part of the brain's power of its activity. For the most part, it's monitoring things in an incredible way. So the brain it's an interesting thing, and it goes a bit further because if you go into a shop and you say, I want a pair of headphones. So you've got a number of headphones. You've got blue ones, yellow ones, all the rest of it, different features and so on. Now you're deliberating what one shall I get?
Yeah.
Well, research ever since the 1960s 1960s has shown that even before we've made a conscious decision on things like that, there's neural activity, brain activity, which we may not know it or realize it, but it's making that decision for us. Now, some people may disagree with that, but if you read into this, neuroscientists think there's a lot in this, that it makes that decision, and then we say, "Oh, I think I'll have the red pear," but somehow the brain has made the decision. And more research in more recent years, I think 2008, there was a big study on this. It showed, for example, when we spontaneously move. Now, I've been watching you, you've been watching me. I see you move your head sometimes,
Yeah.
you get your Lucozade doing your product placement and stuff. But we're not thinking,
Yeah.
you didn't just think, oh, I'm going to move back in my chair. Now, this might sound trivial,
Yeah.
but what neuroscience research has found is that before we make any spontaneous movement, they've measured brain activity up to 10 seconds or slightly more before the thought, before the movement. Nothing has gone on in our minds about moving, a spontaneous movement. But the brain is aware of it, and it's called the readiness of the brain, something like that. It prepares us for every little movement we make. Now, we're never conscious of these things
Yeah.
because, let's face it, we don't want to. We're constantly on the move, aren't we? When we're not in bed asleep, we're constantly moving. I'm moving my hands as I speak now.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also automated. But just because it's simple stuff like movements, it doesn't mean the brain isn't actually monitoring it and preparing us to do that. And I mean, to come back to your point as well, very good point. Um, when you sort of sat on something sharp,
Yeah.
you might have had a bit more of an upmarket example, if I may say. But for example, if we if we touch the kettle accidentally,
Yeah.
we don't decide, oh, I think I'll move my hand. The brain pretty quickly says, move that hand, and we've done it before
Yeah.
we've even almost realized we're burning our hand. And of course, there's lots of things like that.
Yeah.
If we injure ourselves, cut ourselves, the brain will, in many cases, send blood to that area to
Yeah.
support what's happening. If we get embarrassed, or, you know, it will send blood to the face and make us blush.
Yeah.
All these things, the brain is constantly on our side. Now, people at some level, at some point in all this, they say, well, hang on a minute, we are our brain. This is not like some ghost interloper who's come into ourselves. But I don't know. It's often the way that the brain does seem to have it to be a separate entity. And when people say, "Oh, we are our brain," and we think we can try and understand why we do things, how things work, and so on, I've always wondered, for example, where do dreams come from? You think of the dreams and nightmares. I don't know about you, but people appear in my dreams
Yeah.
who I would say I don't know who they are. Some people who interpret dreams suggest that every face in your dream is someone you've seen before. But I
Right.
mean, I've never found that because I find there's complete strangers. And when you think sometimes of the weirdness of a dream, and when you're in the dream, it doesn't seem weird.
No.
So I don't feel that's coming from me as if I'm one and the same with my brain. It's like it does, the brain does that maybe as some necessary release from our stresses or whatever. I don't know. But the whole point is that free will, coming back to that,
Yeah.
it's a subject which is not quite as straightforward, I think, as we think. There's far more decision making going on by the brain, as we've seen, or as you can read about, with the activity that prepares an action or a
Yeah.
decision before we've even consciously thought about that. So, overall, on balance, and of course, we could talk about this for a long time, but
Yeah.
for me, I think we have limited free will. We can make decisions. I might decide to go and get a drink or whatever. But more than that, I think the brain looks after us, and some decisions effectively it makes for us.
Yeah.
So I submit
Right.
that
I'm just,
motion.
yeah, something just came to my mind now. So imagine, Trevor, you're on a deserted island, right? There's nobody else there, and you happen to find yourself there, right? What are the restrictions to your free will there? Are there any?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, in the sense that you could, I don't know, you